Over the last 5 years, we have witnessed a lot of changes and improvements to the adoption system in India. However, the one aspect that still remains a bone of contention is the fact that working adoptive parents are not given equal rights as that of birth parents. And this is even more specific with the Maternity Benefits Act in India, where there is a clear delineation of maternity and parental benefits for a majority of adoptive parents. With a growing number of special families that born via adoption. Personally, I think there is a dire need for more empathy from every organization towards adoptive parents. And that brings us to today's discussion about why and how organizations can become more empathetic towards adoptive parents. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another interesting session with Pragnya and the National Human Resource Welfare Association in collaboration with iAsia News Music. We have with us today a very interesting panel. I take great honor in welcoming Suruchi Maitra, Aman Dhal, and Srijit Pillai. Suruchi is the co-founder of Artha School of Entrepreneurship, which is a non-profit built with the sole intention of giving back to the startup ecosystem. In the past, Suruchi has led the HR function of very major organizations, which include, she was the CHRO of Lenskart, she was the APAC HR at United Legs, and was also the aide of HR in exclusively.in and Sher Singh. So welcome, Suruchi, to the panel today.
Thank you so much, Keertana. I look forward to the discussion.
Same here, Suruchi. I also take great pleasure in welcoming Aman Dhal, the founder of the award-winning global integrated communications consultancy, Comms Credible. Through his venture, Aman is trying to build trust within the ecosystem that binds the media and the corporate community. In the past, Aman was the story maker in chief for PolicyBazaar.com and led their storytelling business journey from a valuation of 100 million in 2014 to over 2 billion in 2020, which is like a huge leap. In 2019, Exchange for Media recognized Aman among India's most influential game changers in the corporate communications and PR field. And this is just one of many, many awards that he has won. So welcome, Aman, to today's session.
Thank you, Kirtana. My pleasure. Look forward.
Same here. We also have with us Srijit Pillai, who is a clinical research professional. I'm sorry, you'll just have to excuse me for that noise. So we also have with us Srijit Pillai, who is a clinical research professional, and more importantly, he's an adoptive parent to a very adorable toddler. He's currently working with Accenture, and he has a very heartening story to share about, empathy shown by his employer, which is Accenture, towards adoptive parents. So welcome, Srijit. We're very excited to listen to your story today.
Thank you, Keertana. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Looking forward to the discussion.
Same here. So before we begin, I would like to thank our media partners, iAsia News Music, and their dynamic team for broadcasting this event live across 170 plus countries. On behalf of Pragnya and the NHRWA, I would like to thank Dr. Krishna Puttaparthi, who is the CEO and head of iAsia News, which is headquartered in Dallas, Anu Benakati, who is the COO of iAsia News, and the team of iAsia News Music based out of Bangalore, India, led by its Chief Operating Officer, Vidya Sagar, the head of creative design and technical, Jayant, head of public relations, Vinuta Jayant, along with Kishore Bhatia from Dubai, and social media managers, Anandita and Sagar. So to begin today's discussion, I would like to ask both of you, Suruchi and Aman, as business leaders, how often have you come across employees adopting a child, and have any of them reached out to you for support from the organization?
Aman, would you like
I think, me as an entrepreneur, I've had a very different journey. So basically, in my last role, actually, I was in a communication role. Frankly speaking, I have not come across any such instance where a parent, came with such a request. I think, Suruchi, you might have, as an HR person, might have had such experiences, and you'll be able to tell better. Maybe I'll be able to add my viewpoint in terms of, because, for me, this was very new. When in fact, Kirtana approached me also. And it was very interesting. But I've got some viewpoints as a, especially entrepreneur now, last 1.5 years. I've got 3 women who have gone for maternity leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And as a startup, especially a bootstrapped one, I'm very proud that we've been able to support them. However, this is a very specific topic, and I think I like you to start, and then I'll be able to add some stuff.
Sure. So, to answer your question specifically, Kirtana, I have never in my 24 years received a request for from an employee, looking for leave for adoption. However, I think I was an early. I adopted a small girl, while I was working, and at that point I was in IBM, and IBM already had a defined policy of 4 weeks for adoption, and that is what I used when the baby came home. But I use my personal leave, paid leave, other kind of leave to manage all the other parts. I have, of course, had friends who've adopted, and we have talked about it and talked about what people have been through and how to deal with it from a work point of view. But MNCs have because there are some countries already a little more ahead in this process of family leave, care leave, child leave, etc. Come and have pretty standard systems and policies that slightly more progressive companies, even Indian companies, do end up following. And I mean, I'm calling them progressive if they're giving 2 weeks of paternity leave or five days of paternity leave, because the bulk is not doing it. Of course, there is a lot to go and move forward. And you must remember that almost 90+% of the working population in India outside of MSME, outside of agriculture, are small and medium enterprises that do not have the ability to even think of a construct like this at this point to probably grow in while they're growing and sustaining. So I really am very keen to hear Aman's experience here. But yeah, that's the answer.
I think interesting, Suruchi. I think, and you are very, very right. When you say, obviously, some of the MNCs are carrying whatever policies and principles from their own countries, and that's why I think it's a very different take
Yeah.
on this subject. Obviously, it's a government subject. Obviously, some things companies do come up with their own policies. However, in such matters, usually what the instance has been seen is, companies go by what the government ruling is. Obviously, having said that, uh, you know, in principle, how they adopt and action those is something, it depends on the company's spirit and culture. Uh, and we have heard cases, what happens behind the scenes. But anyways, I've got a very, very a different view on this. And I feel, because I'm running a bootstrap startup, I think somewhere a policy needs to come up in a way it protects both organizations as well as these kind of individuals who are adopting. Obviously, it's a new thing. Obviously, for me it was first thing, I heard something like this, so I was really, really intrigued by the subject. I didn't knew, I actually googled. Okay, and I think Kirtana also took me through what happens. But I think certainly what can happen is, I think, a layered approach in terms of, see, obviously, if there is a company of a certain size, it can afford to give more than a company of a certain lesser size. So I think somewhere regulations need to come. Someone needs to actually forward those kind of documents to the government so that it constructs into a policy. See, what happens is usually, for instance, say for a startup, what I'm just going to give you an entrepreneur outlook on this from a parent. I'm going to give you an entrepreneur outlook. What happens is usually, how I feel things can become better, shape up better. Again, is, I think, how also honest parents are with such a thing, which is going to be coming ahead in their life. Are you giving enough time to the employer also to think through? It can't be so sudden that they're not able to, if they don't have a policy, I'm saying, if they don't have a policy, are you able to make requests in much in advance, right? So that they're able to, if they don't have a policy, they're able to think through and provide something which is a win-win for both parties. Usually, in entrepreneurial mindset, what happens is, usually what you are thinking is, okay, if that person is not there, if that person is an integral part of your team, You are thinking, who's gonna do that role, right? And if this person can actually ensure there is someone who can actually take up the duties and roles in the absence, I think that is the best what an organization asks for. But having said that, this is I'm talking from a very small size startup entrepreneurial mindset. Obviously, if you have obviously a bigger structure, bigger scheme of things, these things are taken very, very differently. However, what for instance, I have, when I didn't even had a health cover, a group employer health cover. When we got to know, there are mothers in the making, in the sense, the women were pregnant. We ensured we quickly actually bought these covers in time. So while we were trying to move towards a structured organization, when I started, obviously, first thing was revenues, right? I how do I sustain if I don't have business? So my first thing was revenues, and then obviously, the thing was, once you start moving ahead in the journey, we're trying to make the organization more structured. We have more employee welfare policies. I always say employee welfare policies because I hate this term employee engagement. It has to move towards welfare, uh, because it's such a age-old concept. This employee engagement, I don't think it means anything. People are looking for empathy and welfare from
Right.
an organization. So we quickly actually ensured that we took this cover in time, and I think, see, again, like, uh, we wanted to do it, and that's why we took it. It was no obligation. They knew what they had signed up for, right? So again, I think it depends on case to case. If there is something which comes very last minute, I think at times also employers are not advanced ready, sorry. And what happens also is, if you look at the current scenario, there is a lot of talent churn happening. One, obviously, we are going through a stage where obviously a lot of startups has busted into the scene. We see two different worlds happening. One where there is firing happening, and one there is like organizations struggling to actually get more talent. So there are two unique struggles happening right now. You will see, and
So,
organization, I feel, again, are always. I think if you speak honestly with your employer, I think people are always trying to help. However, having said that, I think a structured policy is the need of the hour, which makes things much more foolproof for everyone. So that no one struggles. It's a gray area, right?
right.
So
So,
if there is no, yeah,
yeah, in
okay,
fact, Aman, if for the benefit of a lot of people, as per the Maternity Benefits Amendment Act of 2017 by the central government, it is stated that an adoptive mother gets 12 weeks of maternity leave with all benefits if the age of the adopted baby is below 3 months. Now,
right,
the problem here is that a child that is given up for adoption has to be within the specialized adoption agency for 3 months. Only after that, the child gets into the adoption pool. So even if it's a newborn, the only time that the child gets adopted is after 3 months of age. Right. So
right,
the act has no benefit as such for people. However, there have been a few other organizations like the KSRTC, which is the Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation. They give a complete 6 month benefit to the adoptive mother, and the 6 months can be taken anytime within 1 year of the adoption, which shows how empathetic as an organization they are. In fact, Srijit over here is an adoptive parent himself. He works at Accenture. So, Srijit, can we hear your story and, how has your journey been as an adoptive parent with your organization?
Yeah, sure. Yes, Ketan. So, I have worked with multiple companies for my about 10 years in my career. So all are mostly multinational companies, and I've always been in a lookout for any adoption related benefits in the organization policies. Whenever I join an organization, we do go through their policies, right? So at that time, I have been looking out for these adoption related policies are there or not. And mostly, I could see that most of the companies just follow the standard government rules wherein maternity benefit will be given for 3 months period if the baby's age is less than 3 months. Nowhere there, as in, and some companies even don't even mention the parental benefit or anything on those paternal benefit as well. As in, for male parents, there are no benefits that is mentioned anywhere. Even that government policy also mentions only about female employees. So if single adoptive parent is there, male, he would almost not have any benefit at all. How will he manage? Thankfully, it was not my case. For my organization, thankfully, I worked for Accenture at the right time, wherein they had a policy of 6 months of leave for any adoptive child, which is under 16 years of age. That was a very broad category. 16 years of age they could consider, and was applicable for both male and female employees. So it had
That's
an equal benefit, similar to the biological mothers, biological parents. Similar to that, they had considered the adoption leaves as well. And again, as you mentioned, Kirtana, it was during the one year period of adoption from the handover, they could anytime take that leave and utilize that time to bond with the child, because this bonding with an adoptive child is actually the most critical and the important part that we have to go through. So that is where I would say that I thank my lucky stars that I was working with Accenture during this phase of my life, that I could avail this benefit.
So Srijit, do you have a lot of adoptive parents within the organization, or is it that as an organization they just took an empathetic stand and said, no, let's just include it in the policy and let employees take the benefit of it, whoever decides to adopt?
Yeah, frankly speaking, in my awareness, I have not seen anyone coming up with an adoptive request for a leave or so. But yeah, after I came up, one of my leadership person also had a similar process in place, as in they are in waiting list. So maybe somewhere down the line, they will go through that adoption process and take that leave. So, and I believe this policy was already there from quite some time with Accenture.
That's wonderful. But how has it been for you're part of various support groups, right? And I do understand from our conversations that you also have friends who adopted pretty much around the time. Rather, they got their referral around the time that you had also adopted your child. So, how has their experience been with their organizations?
So one of my close friends actually didn't have this benefit, that is adoption benefit was not there for them, for her. So what she did was she obviously discussed this with the immediate supervisors and line managers when she was expecting a referral in about 4 months in advance. She had discussed it. She started the conversation around 4 months in advance, and then there was a blunt response, frankly speaking, that was not the correct response, and HR gives to an employee that this is how the legal requirement is, and if the baby is less than 3 months, only then we would be considering, which would not be practically possible in any scenario currently. So that was a blunt response, and over and above this, we will not be able to do anything, and there is no legal requirement that we have to fulfill. So that is what they just said to that employee, and then the employee, as in my friend, could actually go through the other leadership members, had multiple meetings with them, with the HR, and tried to convince them that if they could consider something, show some empathy towards this situation, because it was required for her. And it was a good thing that the leadership and the team showed that benefit in giving that benefit to the employee, because the associate also was working with the company for a long time. So that built the requirement, as Aman mentioned. The employee was working with the organization, so the organization saw that value in that employee, and that is why they maybe considered this and gave that benefit to that employee. And it was approved, as in it was approved as a deviation from the policy, exception from the policy, but it was done, as in she got some benefit out of it, as in 3 months of leave she could get it.
But are you aware if the organization went ahead and made a policy change for the larger benefit of the
no such changes were made, and even it was something which was not to be discussed upon very openly.
Right. So Right. So, Suruchi, I wanted to ask you. So, usually in a smaller organization, right, we find that employees find it easier to approach their leadership and ask for these benefits. But most parents, adoptive parents that I have met and counseled or spoken with over these last 5 years, especially those who are working in larger organizations, they either take the fight or the flight mode when they're nearing their referral. So, why do you think this happens? From an HR perspective.
Yeah, okay. So from an HR perspective, what normally people will follow is, look at best practices. And we talked about that when I was speaking earlier, that what is the general thing and how much should we give. And then when there is a specific case, we will address it. Mostly it's driven by, how organizations will calculate their overall costs of benefits and their budgets and stuff like that. And, that's very general and not specific to adoption alone. It will happen across all policies, etc. But in the example that Srijit also just gave, I think a lot of people in the HR team are following a laid down process, and they're almost sometimes wearing blinkers. Know that this is how it is, and this is my first response. And that first response does send people off either into a, I'm not going to ask these guys, go into a flight mode, or sometimes people have the maturity to think, let me go higher up in the organization and have a conversation with someone who might be able to understand or empathize with my needs. Empathy is also something, people learn over time, right, with experience. And although everybody who plays a job or a role needs to be prepared for it, oftentimes there are instances that come out where people have not been very, sensitive to the matter that was being discussed. So in large organizations, Kirtana, not just like how Srijit explained, if a case does come up, and unless the organization is not toxic, in its way of operation, there will always be, some discretion, and something will work out for that particular employee. There may be back and forth. However, in adoption, it's a very tough one because it comes overnight, and you don't realize when you're,
Exactly.
you get a call, right? It just comes one fine day. So, and that's the really tough one to manage. And again, in large organizations, somehow there is room because there are more resources and so on and so forth that helps. But like I said earlier, in small, medium businesses, startups, entrepreneurs, it's very, very, very tough to consider something like this. And people would want to, quickly, and I've many times seen, even for simple maternity cases, managers don't want women in their teams, don't want to hire women for future such, issues that may come up. And they feel their work suffers, and they would rather have a all male team. And I've seen managers like that, it happens. Um, um, so I think it's the question, while making a small start in large companies or corporations is a good place to create more awareness, it doesn't really solve the issue for the larger, workspace, because of how this is not a part of the reform system right now in India, right? So over a period of time, when more and more reforms come in, and more statutory linked benefits like Aman was calling, or minimum requirements come in, other countries also have them with pay, without pay, or partial pay, right, for a period of X number of weeks, and so on and so forth. Thinking has to go in that direction. And but it's a very complex issue. It doesn't have an easy answer.
Right. Because one thing that we've observed, at least in Indian organizations, is that unless there is a statutory law that is there, usually most organizations shy away from, including certain benefits. That said, I would like to share a bite from Nilanjana Gupta, who's a core team member of Atmaja. Atmaja is an adoption support group that was founded about 20 years ago. So quite a revolutionary group that was started completely by adoptive parents. And it has played a very critical role in bringing about several policy changes at the central level, that's at the central government level, to benefit adoptive parents and children. In fact, one of their largest contributions, and most adoptive parents today are very thankful to them for kind of fighting for it, is that ensuring that the birth certificate of the adopted child does not have the status saying adopted. And Nilanjana personally, in fact, has worked with many child rights organizations and adoption and other, issues, including with UNICEF and with CRY and Save the Children, and on a very voluntary basis. So let us just take a quick look at what she has to say with regard to parental benefits for adoptive parents.
When Adoptive was formed in 2000, one of the first issues that we tried to take up very seriously was the issue of maternity leave for adoptive mothers and fathers as well. Because many of us who were working at that time, when we brought our children home, we found it very difficult to manage the entire process of making the child part of the family. Often the children were not completely healthy, and we realized that this was a very important part of the whole process. And so we started lobbying and writing and reading to various authorities. We wrote to the Women's Commission, we wrote to CARA, though CARA was not as strong as it is now. We had press reports on this whole issue, talked with our friends in the media, and we tried to create a situation where the idea of maternity leave would be accepted. Now, one of the things that was the first reaction of almost everybody we spoke to was that why do adoptive mothers need maternity leave? Because they don't have anything physically wrong with them. And we kept trying to explain to them that maternity leave is more for the welfare of the child and for the mother to recover from childbirth. We spoke to one of our friends, also an alumni from our university. He was an MP at the time, and he suggested that we write directly to the Department of Personnel Affairs and talk to the minister in charge. And finally, we found that in 2006, there was a government order which was released in which Adoptive's contribution and Adoptive's point of view was mentioned. And from that point on, maternity leave became part of the government system. And following that, more state governments also took it up later on. And we also spoke to everybody we knew that please try to bring up this issue and implement it in, if you're in a private company, then talk to your representatives, their associations, whatever the boss, included there. But still, there is a lot of problem, as we all know, that people are not getting the full benefit of because there are certain restrictions which depend on the age of the child, and also that some private companies and other institutions don't still give maternity leave. So we do think this is a very serious issue that needs to be taken further, because as we know, the mother and father's care in the first few months is extremely important. And the older the child is, the more difficult the process of integration is. So we hope that something further can be developed in this area.
So that was Nilanjana Gupta from Atmaja. And given this, in fact, we're having quite a lot of comments coming in on our social channels. I would like to read them out because they might lend us into the next set of questions that we have for you all. So Kunal Panja, who's watching us on Facebook, says Cognizant had 2 months of paternity leave for adoption, but the management pressurized him to take a max of just 30 days. And he found the whole process extremely pathetic for him as an adoptive parent. And luckily, it was the work from home phase, so he could manage things around with regard to the child. And He says he's definitely, he does seem like one of those employees who are very upset about the lack of empathy and the way these policies are implemented within organizations, especially for the fact that they already have a policy in place for 2 months, but then the employee is forced to like cut down by half. And Mr. Ashok Kumar says that the central government should make a law for 3 months of leave with salary to all adoptive parents as a blanket, and this should be applicable to all organizations. So that said, Suruchi, again, another question to you, as an HR leader. So as Nilanjana also mentioned, so an adopted child, irrespective of the age, whether they're an infant or whether they're up to 16, 17, 18 years, they do need extensive care, and there's a lot of effort and time that goes into adjusting with the post adoption phase, both for the parent as well as the child. And in fact, the older the child, we realize that there is a lot more effort and there's a lot more time that is needed for bonding and adjustments and so on. So do you think it's time that organizations across the country, blanketed, irrespective of whether they are the public sector, the private sector, or or the NGOs or whatever they are, they're made aware and they're made and they're sensitized towards considering these aspects when they're drafting their parental leave policies?
Absolutely. The answer, of course, is yes to that question. I think a lot of it has got to do with lack of awareness, because when we did start out, we didn't see so many, cases or requests that have come up even in our working lives. But having said that, it doesn't mean that adoption is not happening. A lot of adoption is happening, and maybe there are, employees who have chosen not to even bring it up, chosen to take time off. There are cultural nuances that kind of play. The gender stereotypes are pretty strong even now, and it's possible that a woman may have considered quitting even before adopting, like they do when they have children, because whatever said and done, a lot of the responsibilities of children, as well as of taking care of your household requirements, do fall on the woman, even in metro cities. And there are some changes to this, but hopefully for the future generations to come, if we don't set out a foundation which kind of starts young boys and girls to start changing the way they think about stereotypes, it's a problem that can never get solved. So absolutely yes, it needs consideration, it needs awareness, it needs reforms, it needs alignment, and it needs guidance, like people like Aman. And there are very few, Aman, who would even consider that. Go Google, figure it out, let me see. Some may simply just say, Abhi, I can't do it. I'm trying to get my product market fit. I'm trying to, get my first revenue in. I can't do this at this point of time. It doesn't work out. I empathize with you. I understand, but maybe we should work together at some other point of time, because there are too many problems that come together, right? So awareness is absolutely important. Trying to be able to overlook the stereotypes that exist, and not in India. It's a global thing. Percentage of working women in senior roles is low across the world, and there's a lot of research around that, and a lot of it has got to do with domestic responsibilities, whether biologically or adopting or anything else, right? So how it needs to go away from armchair drawing room conversation to something real, given the kind of complex issues and problems that people face, and this being one of them. And I think that is the question that needs to be answered. Where is it on the needs hierarchy, really? Which problem should be addressed first? But and like I said, there are no right or wrong answers to these questions. And somebody shared on Facebook, people who lived through it have had bitter experience, as well as good experiences based on where they were at that point of time. But I think creating awareness, alignment, more talk, more support groups, I would be a good step that would help people to start considering, some of these issues.
Right. Just to share a personal experience. So I'm a parent to a biological child as well as an adopted child, and my younger one came home when she was 14 months old. So pretty much the age of your child, Suruchi. And there are different challenges that you have with an adopted child, even if they're young. Like for instance, she's got certain deep-seated psychological fears. So around the time that she was abandoned at the at the adoption agency as a 10-month-old, exactly around the time every year she starts developing certain fears. She has anxieties coming up, and they're deep-seated. And as a small baby, you can't expect them to understand. It takes time for such fears to go away, and that's the time when it becomes very stressful, even as an adoptive parent, because you yourself are learning things on the go. It's not about feeding your child, or it's not about them having a fever and giving them a medicine. This is like, you need that absolute emotional connect. And I think these are issues that practically every organization needs to be sensitized with, to make their policies more employee friendly. That said, before I throw a question at you, Aman, I do want to ask Srijit this question. So Srijit, you've seen the worst side in your acquaintances experiences, and you've also enjoyed the best from your end, right? So how has your loyalty towards the organization been ever since you enjoyed this benefit with them?
I would definitely say that the policies, the benefits that the organization give me, it has worked in my favor, because this is what I expect from an organization. We spend almost more than half of our awake day with the organization, and we do that for the organization. The organization gives us back, so it is actually helpful. So this is the longest that I have been with a same organization in my career. So I see that it definitely impacts the loyalty, the benefits they provide, the policies they have, how they empathize with the individuals. So we do feel that connect. We do feel we do feel valued out there. So that actually helps with the loyalty in a longer run. Definitely, it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand. So it's ultimately, it comes down to the three major aspects. It's about making employees feel valued, feel cared for, and feel supported, especially in such very important stages of their personal life. Because I think at the end of the day, today all of us are looking for that balance between the personal and the professional life. So Aman, as an entrepreneur, I want to understand your perspective on this particular aspect. So you did talk about how organizations, especially startups, are mostly focused on getting the product out there, looking at the profit margins and so on. But how do you think they can now begin to strike a balance as a best practice, to ensure that they, along the lines of expecting their employees to go above and beyond and deliver at the professional level, how can the organization as such, from the very word of go, from the time they set up their organization, start also going above and beyond and bringing in certain very important policies that work in the benefit of their staff?
I think very interesting question. Just a sec. I think okay. I hope there is no disturbance coming from my side. Okay, great.
No.
I think let me put it like this way. You people would agree somewhere. Love is a two-way process, right? And empathy is also a two-way process. At times, what I have seen, what I have observed, uh, if you start thinking not as an employee but as an owner, I think you will be able to give a lot more empathy. If you think of that organization as your baby, right? And actually, we give our best. I feel we in India lack that communication skills, where we are able to showcase that empathy. Uh, and I think if people are able to show that empathy towards organization, I think organizations always want to do the best, because these are the people who are running the show. They're the ones who are executing. Coming back to your point, from day zero, what happens is, uh, if you are a very well funded organization, then also there is the stages, right? There is A, B, C, D priority. And I don't have a HR person right now. You know what I mean? I've got already 1.5 years. We are around 14, 15 employees. And I always say, all of you are co-owners. We're not employees here. That's how we are trying to build the organization. Now, day zero, the priority is, we're firefighting, right? We're firefighting first to ensure you get some business, then obviously to ensure your operations smoothen out, be part of the operations. What you're trying to do is you're paying salaries on the last working day of the month. You know, that's my first priority, right? Then obviously the priority is okay, some social security, which is through insurance, right? So obviously there is a needs chart, right? Also as an organization you are looking through, right? Also on the operation side, you're trying to smoothen things, right? If you are a B2B organization, you're trying to ensure that the clients are getting updates regularly, proactively, right? So you are going through a midst of things, right? Obviously, and you are trying to hire also leaders who can take independent decisions. Is there a person who can take decisions on the policies side, right? So it's a gradual process. Even a well-funded startup struggles, right? We're talking about technology companies today, right? They're struggling to hire CTOs in the market. There are no techies, and kind of, if you will see in the market right now, everyone is struggling. People say they will join, and on the last day, and I think Suruchi, you would have say faced this, right? The talent even at a higher or a junior level, right? People, a week before or even like on the day of joining, they don't join. So again, I think in India, usually what I've seen is empathy needs to be practiced at both ends. But as an organization, obviously, I think what can be done is if they're starting from day zero, a startup, say a toolkit can be provided by by a government or some statutory body, which kind of gets implemented from day zero. Obviously, and it has to again depend on the organization type, where they are placed, right? And accordingly, I think things can move. Obviously, it has to be a very well thought out decision. Much more needs to be thought. Every organization is at a different stage. How does an organization say, for instance, an organization was a big organization, suddenly, COVID, there was no business. We have seen such organizations as well. Some people, they could carry through with them. Some people they couldn't, right? So again, I think it's a very, very tough, one to actually take on and say, this is the right answer. But however, obviously, policies can be framed keeping different scenarios in mind. I think more scenario planning with then obviously, employees are also able to get an understanding. Okay, whatever was done was fair. At times, also, what I've seen is, as I mentioned again, if you're not giving enough time to the employer, I don't think they'll be able to plan it better. Are you able to communicate over email, written communication, the way you are saying, I think that, I think I've also seen in India, we are very, very bad with written communication. What happens is, we will go and, okay, make this request. The person might have 10 things to do. That person genuinely wants to help, but that person might forget. Or the person he might have told or she might have told forgets to document, and then again that person follows up. 4 weeks are gone, right? So again, I think written communication, I'm talking now as also a communicator. Written communication is very, very important. How you communicate your subject is very, very important. And I think there is somewhere, if people are not able to communicate effectively, I think there should be a person in house who's able to draft for them. Not every person is a very good writer, right? They might want to express something, but they might end up saying something else, right? So I think documentation becomes very, very critical. But as I mentioned again, from an organization perspective, from day zero, either a toolkit which is provided by a government. Okay, these are your ready-made policies, right? You implement from day zero. This has to be there, and somebody sensitized. Maybe it could come from MCA. MCA, say wherever your company is incorporated. I'm not saying like you are paying certain fee, right? You increase the fees, right? You increase the registration fees, and it becomes kind of, okay, rather than I pay say 5,000 for registering my company, I pay 20,000 upfront or 30,000. What I mean, and a toolkit comes, a briefing person comes and says, okay, these are the policies, and this is how it'll, the policies will change as your organization evolves. So I'm saying, like, again, like, I'm just giving you my perspective as an entrepreneur.
Right.
uh, I also will give you an example, like, for instance, when I was I became a father, right? I feel, it's very less for a father. I think at that time we got, what, 2 weeks, I recall. It's very less, right? Even a father has a duty in a home, right? At the same time, but that's how things are. People were actually, I think at that given time, there was not even like work from home policies, but I think people do, I feel, employers, sorry, are considerate. If you are considerate towards them, you're not also
Right.
letting the work hamper.
Right. So, what I would also kind of, like to bring to note over here with everyone is, we're not really saying that there needs to be like a complete 6 month, paid maternity benefit. If it can be given by certain organizations, that's fine. But what if you can create policies around, like as Suruchi mentioned, already we have a shortage of women leaders at the top. There is a lot of gender parity over there, disparity rather over there. So what if you can kind of create a support system saying that, okay, you know what, we are a small organization, we may not be able to, give you complete financial benefits, but you take off for this certain period, and you come back, and your seniority or your designation or your remuneration, none of that is going to get affected, because we understand that you need this time to bond with your new baby. So and the child can be of any age. And in fact, there are a lot of adoptive parents, rather prospective adoptive parents, who are keen on going ahead and adopting siblings, or multiple children at a time, because as per the government ruling policies, most as much as possible, children, as in like siblings who are given up for adoption, are not separated. Either you adopt them together, or only with the consent of the eldest child, who needs to reach a certain age, can they be separated and given up for adoption separately. So, with these stringent rules in place, when there are parents out there who do wish to give, their grow a family in a different way, um, organizations, I personally believe, should start kind of making different types of allowances depending on what they can afford at that given point in time. And most importantly, the fear that most adoptive parents have, which is why they take the fight or flight mode, is the fact that one is they're already emotionally charged, because it's not like in a pregnancy where you're eased into the parenting process. Here, it's like an elephantine pregnancy. You wait for 3 years and suddenly there's a baby in your hands and you don't know what to do. It's all like you're starting afresh without it's like a clean slate, and you don't know where to start from. So, if we can have guidelines in place, as in like, okay, if this to this is the age of the child, this is the benefits that you get. This to this is the age of the adopted child, this is the benefits that you get, because the challenges are very different at every age, right?
Kirtana, I think there's merit in what you said as well as what Aman said. I think he made a very good point. People do not communicate clearly, and that becomes a huge challenge because it gets dropped on your lap at the very last minute and you don't know what to do. And this is a real problem that exists. Clear communication about anything is very important, and two-way. And two-way. Two, I think uh, um, there can't be a policy for everything, but I think where it stems from is value centered leadership. So if you are able to um, uh, operate as a founder or as a CEO of a company with the mindset of taking decisions that are right for the long term, even if there are short term pains. And this applies to business, to economics, to how you run your operations, to everything, including your employee benefit policies.
Right.
Somewhere, I think that uh, kind of supersedes, and that's why you will find people who are more sensitive and therefore manage that. Um, I mean, yes, what you are suggesting is a really novel way of trying to see what I can do today as a company, because this is all I can afford to do at this point of time. But with experience, I can tell you it's very difficult to put that down on paper. It's very difficult to be able to say, okay, how much or where I should draw the line. And that's why the discretionary efforts come in. And and also cause a lot of fairness issues in the minds of employees later because of the lack of communication and lack of talking openly. Some of the things that you talked about in your own experience about your daughter, or what Srijit was talking about, or what I have faced, or anyone who's been through this journey, has to. I realize there's a lot of talk in companies about diversity, about women, about roles, about stereotypes, but they don't go below the surface. So these examples don't come up. And I think another good way of doing this is to, you know, um, have a lot of talks, in the organizations or webinars that generally increase the level of awareness amongst employees, not necessarily only managers or HR heads or CEOs, right?
Right.
Because people are just not aware of what goes through this process, what everyone goes through, and for how long, and how many times, things will show up. And I think that also would be a really good way where NGOs like Pragya and others would. I mean, those conversations would probably also help a lot in creating that awareness, and then the policy will happen after there is more awareness.
Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree with you, Suruchi. We do have a few questions that are coming up on social media. So we have Angelo Roy, who says there is a very skewed adoption pattern where the number of children adopted from the special needs category and of siblings is dropping. And probably one is social stigma, but another reason is probably that prospective adoptive parents are apprehensive of the support that they may receive from their employers in the case of adoption of special needs children or older children as such. So she wants to know, Aman, I think this is for you, because she says, as an entrepreneur, do you believe that there is that as a blanket understanding, all organizations must be supportive of adoptive parents who are keen to adopt children, especially with special needs?
See, again, I can't say for all. I can talk about myself. I'll try to support. See, for me, again, like, I think also Suruchi mentioned, it's very discretionary. You know, if you see the love from that employee, if that person thinks of yours as your own organization, their own organization, I think you will give back. And again, I think communication becomes very, very important. Having said that, again, I think you you as an organization are not able to look through as a founder everything, right? There are n number of things happening, right? uh, sometimes operations, there is a challenge. Organization go through phases, right? Also, HR centric policies, when we talk about welfare policies, I'm a big uh, endorser of employee welfare as a concept, because I feel, when you think of welfare, when you think of today in the times of creator economy, right? Where earlier what I have seen witnessed is, usually you had entrepreneurs who were not distributing wealth. Today, startups, what they have done is they've distributed wealth. That is where you have seen people, are able to live, as a nation, we have progressed. We are able to spend more, we are able to afford more, our quality of life has got better. So I think from an organization perspective, uh, you know, these all policies, I think somewhere needs to come from a certain direction, because these are, see, again, like, just think about it. I've got 14 employees. I'd actually never heard about this concept, right? When you approached me, right, I got to know, this is what also happens, and it was very interesting for me, very intriguing. That's why I again agreed also, to come, because it was very interesting. I read through and I was like, wow, okay, policies are different. And I think, obviously, I think you people are doing a great job also in creating awareness. Once awareness happens, policies change, and it's a long drawn process. Policies don't change overnight. So from a also, people coming from, you know your children being adopted, especially able children and all that, uh, I think, obviously, there can't be one size fit all policy, right? It has to be different. uh, for children adopted, who are with different abilities, or organizations who are at different stages, right? So I think it has to somewhere do matchmaking, and
Right.
somewhere I think somebody who is working in this domain can do justice, who has actually studied this subject. It has to be a work of an academician, a policymaker, right? Forums where everyone can give their own inputs, and those going to be collated, and an organization like Pragna can actually work and collaborate and create more awareness. Uh, Again, I think I can't talk about organizations. Uh, Again, I think while I was an entrepreneur in my last organization, much like a leader, but having said that, I never faced such a thing. But if you ask me today, I'll be very, very open to support.
Great. Thank you, Aman. Angelo, I hope your question is answered. We have Sahana who asks, many women are forced to leave their jobs because naturally the child is the priority. I think, Suruchi, you did talk about this. So this way, people are only losing opportunities in their career, but not only losing opportunities in their career, but organizations are also probably losing capable and talented people. So do you think, in such situations, are organizations okay with letting go of such staff who find it difficult to communicate about the fact that they have these special needs?
I think both ways. I think Ethan and I have personally seen this many times over. Many times you don't, the organization doesn't want to let go of a talented employee, and the circumstances are such personally that the employee has no choice in the matter. And slightly more progressive companies or leaders would offer all kinds of support that include, work from home, when work from home was not a concept, when COVID was not there, or go home at 4 o'clock, so that you're in time, or to take care of your personal needs, or come to work only 2 times a week or 3 times a week. And to Aman's point, and he's said this a few times over, it's a very important point for employees to understand. The reciprocation of accountability and ownership is very important for a leader to be able to demonstrate that kind of support. And therefore, an employee, it doesn't matter where she works from, as long as she is fulfilling in more than many ways what is required from an organization's point of view. So if that balance is maintained, it's very, very easy to fix this problem. It of course also comes with a lot of maturity on the side of the managers, because managers also have different leadership styles, and there is a certain comfort in the way that they run their team. And while organizations are doing a lot of work in that area also for helping managers become better managers, a lot of it also comes from experience, right? From day one, you are not that person. You experience many things and then you realize. But to answer the question specifically, it's a huge loss. It's a huge loss. And organizations bleed when they see this. The ones that are mature enough to realize this. And then there are others who may simply just say, okay, let's hire someone else. So I think it works both ways.
I think I'll add to Suruchi here,
Sure, Aman.
because I think parents are undergoing such an emotional time. I think that the tempers flay at times. They're not able to listen. I think organizations always want to retain. I will put it like this. Obviously, at times also with managers, the arguments can go in a different direction. I think that is what happens. And I think in life stages, we all witness this. Uh, Somewhere you would also have seen that, what we want to communicate, we're communicating something different. And it happens. You are emotionally charged up, and we have all seen COVID right now, right? In last 24 months, 18, 24 months, what I've seen is people, I think everyone should be very proud of themselves. The way we have actually been able to go indoors, come outdoors, come back indoors. It's not easy. Organizations were struggling for revenues. Uh, People were working, slogging. They're waking up just there in front of the a phone or or a laptop. At the same time, they're managing their households. I think last 24 months have also taught a lot of empathy. Uh, you know, to people. I've seen organizations, people change a lot. Those who were very, very uh, into the face, becoming more empathetic. I think that I think that's correction somewhere COVID brought. I hope and it just continues. As a country, I feel we are not empathetic. It's not in our, also certain sides of the country. It doesn't change overnight. So I think it will take some time. Uh, there are some good things Western world teaches. There are some bad things also, and there are some very goods in our traditions and history. But again, I think it's an evolving process. Whatever is happening right now.
Absolutely. We're just going to take another 5 minutes more. We have a nice comment from Rishu Kumar, who's one of our audience on Facebook, and he says, though companies are waking up these days, still traditional and regional companies don't have the concept of showing much empathy towards adoptive parents. But at least over the last, even though he did not receive um, anything more than 5 days after he brought his baby home, he did, and that was also his earned leave. So he says that new age companies are, at least he has been witnessing that there's a lot of sensitivity and there's a lot of empathy that is coming in, as you said, on a need basis towards adoptive families. And he signs off saying things are changing and there is a lot, but there's still a long way to go.
I'll also say one more thing here, Kirtana.
Yes, yes, Aman.
Uh, Relationships work when there is love on both sides,
Yes,
right? So if it is not working for you, it's not working for you. No, move on. That was not the right organization. You need
right,
not to feel bad about it, right? Same ways, right? It goes for both ways. Even for an organization, if it's not working, it was not working. I think if you will start thinking like that,
right.
relationships will prosper.
Absolutely, absolutely. With that, thank you, Suruchi, Aman, and Srijit. It was a very, very enriching conversation. I think we got to see a very balanced insight today, from both sides, from an employee perspective and, a leadership perspective. So thank you very much for your valuable insights. And thank you to all the audience across the NHRWA network and our social media broadcast. May I now request Mr. Ramprasad, the co-founder of the National Human Resource Welfare Association, to please say a few words.
Thank you, Kirtana. And it was a very interesting subject, really, even though we don't come across these type of discussions. And I would like to thank Suruchi, Aman, and Srijit for your, bring there are so many things which you brought into the pictures, and many things which we are not aware. As Aman was telling that, oh, like this is also there, kind of a thing. And two things what I have understood is that one is that we gave awareness for the people to adopt children. And second thing, the people who are working, they will get benefits when they have that maternity leave, so that when they have adopt a child, they should also get some. This awareness is not there. As Aman was telling that majorly we are lacking in communication. We hesitate to talk. We hesitate to communicate. We're thinking that what other person are thinking. When I say this, what other person may think. Uh, we hold ourselves back and saying that whether shall I tell or why should I tell? If benefit comes, it comes to everybody. Why I should be, in the front end? Many things are there, as you rightly said. As Srijit was mentioning, the policy may be there from many years, and 6 months is not a small, leave facility what people are getting it. And how many people are aware? Maybe if they are aware that the 6 months facility is available, maybe they can go for adopting. Or people who are wanted to adopt, they feel that I'm comfortable, I can take care of my child. The two things are there. Being co-founder of NHRWA, we are connected in all the HRs all over India, and we have conclave in different cities and different places and different levels altogether. The beginners and the middle and senior level HRs, people who are in vice president and above. Maybe we need to put it. We need to communicate to them, telling that no, these policies is required in your organizations. They may consider, as you rightly say, that no, it doesn't happen overnight. We should have a long time to think for them and work towards in that area. And like entrepreneurs, like Amanas open-heartedly was telling that no, I don't mind, I'll try. Somebody has guts to say that I'll try and I'll want to give that, wanting to give this facility to their own employees, because he don't consider that he is their employees. They are one of the partners of our organization. They are the backbones of the people. In the startup, each and every person has to put their response. They don't think that I'm working for somebody. It is my company. That is how any startup company grows and they big. Doesn't happen suddenly when they said, no, last 3 years back I started this company. Now it is a 100 crore company. It doesn't happen overnight because a lot of sacrifices has happened in their personal life and a lot of inputs has come and many things are there. So whether it is a startup company, whether it is a private limited company, or wherever some employees are there, more than 10 people, 20 people are there, policies has to be brought in and awareness has to be brought in. More than policies, that awareness has to be brought in. So on behalf of NHRAA, definitely I'll also take some initiative in terms of putting across this thing. Only thing, Kirtana, you should be in a position to help me out in drafting me what has to be put in, as communication is very important.
Absolutely,
So
Mr.
we'll
Ram.
put it across to all the HR people in the different organizations. So let us bring that awareness from the beginning itself.
Sure.
So thank you, Suruchi, thank you, Aman, and thank you, Srijit, for your excellent. It says that instead of talk, instead of bringing it, it's an open-minded talk. Whatever we had, many people who are seeing this, they have got a lot of awareness. Oh, it's an eye opener for many people. So thank you very much. On behalf of NHRAA, I would like to thank all the people. And as Kirtana, every time they support NHRAA being a moderating, doing an excellent job. And thank you is a very small word for her. It goes much beyond that. Thank you, Kirtana.
Thank you for calling me back again. Yeah.
We love to be with us always.
Thank you, everyone. Do have a lovely weekend ahead. Thank you once again, Surajit, Aman, and Srijit. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye-bye.